Our next speaker today is Ernesto. Ernesto was kind enough a couple of weeks ago to provide a speech organization for our speech crafters, and I asked him to give that speech for our members today. What makes a good speech? How should you pick a speech topic? An engaging speech has a good message. It's so much more than just talking. Today, Ernesto will review the basics of speech organization. Whether you're a veteran or newbie, here are some things every Toastmaster should consider before giving their talk. Welcome, Ernesto.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Can everybody hear me? Oh, this is interesting because my microphone is normally on a stand, but since I was asked to do this project at the last minute, my next project deals with vocal variety and gestures or something along those lines. And because I only have the use of one hand, I decided to disable myself even further by holding an actual microphone. So now I have 0 hands to use for gestures. That's a huge problem for a lot of us because Toastmasters, a lot of the program is built around the effective use of gestures. But what happens when you have no gestures to work with? At that point, then we're really just sort of relying on the power of your voice, which is the exact title of our Speechcraft workshop. So let's get into some concepts or ideas about speech organization and how this works. Every speech has a great beginning, middle, and end. It's basically like going to a restaurant. You have an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert, literally anything that consists of 3 pieces. A speech is the same concept. I've put in the chat for everybody the link to my larger presentation. The notes for everything that I'm talking about today are actually a lot more complicated than what you're seeing on screen today. But back in the Speechcraft presentation, I only had like 3 to 4 minutes or something really heinous as far as time was concerned when I was being asked to do something so huge. So rather than throwing away all of that great information, I decided to put that into the actual notes, which this presentation today is derived from. If you can see here, we've got a great beginning. That's about 15% of your talk. It's probably, in an average 5 to 7 minute speech, it's probably like 60 to 90 seconds, somewhere in there. Just setting the stage, giving us the backstory, why we care about you, what's interesting about what you're going to be talking to us about, and more importantly, how you're going to pique our interest or invite us in to want to listen to what you have to say. Speaking as somebody who is very rarely present in most things, my mind is always wandering into other places. It's really important that we have a great introduction that captivates our audience. Otherwise, we just lose everybody and it's a snooze fest. That's never great, right? Next, we have the middle part, which is about 65%. That's your exposition. That's the main body of your speech. In essay land, in academia, this would be where you make your case or where you're proving your point through the use of examples. In a speech, we would translate that to telling stories, possibly using other visual aids like presentations, or engaging your audience and what they're supposed to do. A good speech focuses on no more than 3 points that relate to your message or topic. In an academic paper, this might be a little bit different, but the reason why we keep it so limited in a speech is just because things have a tendency to really bloat and get out of hand quite fast. Finally, we have the ending, which is where you get to take it home. And this is where you give your speakers something to go home with, something to think about. This is where you get them to start thinking that, oh, this was so much more than just a talk. We'll see some examples about this in a little bit. But the main thing here is with your ending, you really want to focus on the message of your talk. What are you actually trying to convey or get across to your audience? That will show up in this final ending part here. You definitely want to leave people wanting more. Regardless of the quality of your talk or the nature of your presentation, you want to make sure that your audience wants to hear you again, because if they don't want to hear you again, then What good was any of the above even for? So, some ways that we can do this is by narrowing your scope. Being too broad will bloat your speech. Ask yourself some questions that so that you can focus on something in particular. There are four main different types of purposes when it comes to giving a speech. Are you speaking to inform, to persuade, entertain, or inspire? What's really terrific is that Toastmasters International has all different types of pathways that focus on each one of these different virtues within giving speeches. Your purpose will help to define how you deliver your information. So, some broad speech ideas. We want to start with the really big stuff: raising health awareness, the many uses of essential oils, why I'm running for political office, or challenges with corporate training. I go into much greater detail in the handout that's attached to my Google Drive here, so you can take a look at those. But we really want to focus on something that's broad, something that's just big. We'll narrow this down in a moment. More specifically, my surprise skin cancer diagnosis, the benefits of raising your frequencies, water conservation is everything, or inclusive accommodations for new talent retention. These are more specific concepts within the four things that we just now talked about. You'll see that in the handout again, much more clearly than what you're seeing on screen right now. But then when we take these exact same ideas about the more specific scope of your speech, what's the message? Look after your health. It's all that you have. These are whatever is in your message. This is the centerpiece that you want to build your entire speech around. Whatever that you're trying to convey or prove or send home with your audience, make sure that all of the information that you express is centered around that message. It really does make a difference as far as the composition and the overall structure, because now everything is cohesive, and whatever your speech argument or information is about really hits home with your audience. And that's it.
Thank you, Ernesto, for that. There we go. Okay, let's get 1 minute on the timer. Please go into the chat and fill in an evaluation for Ernesto.